Before we start today's episode, I want to take a moment to remember Richard, known as Butch Johnson. Butch passed away a couple of weeks ago, on May 27th, in his hometown of Woodstock, Connecticut, in the US. Butch won Olympic gold in the men's team's event on home soil in Atlanta 96, alongside Justin Hewish and Rod White, defeating South Korea in the final, and won another Olympic medal also in the team's event, this time bronze, in Sydney 2000, alongside Rod White and Victor Vanderlei. When he made the team for Beijing 2008, he reached what was then an unprecedented mark in archery: 5 appearances at the Olympic Games. Even though now there are archers from other countries who have more Olympic appearances than that, this year in Paris, Brady Ellison will become the only American archer to equal Butch Johnson's feat of shooting at our sport biggest event 5 times. Often we say that age matters very little in archery, and Butch was the ultimate example of that. He was 37 years old when he made his Olympic debut in Barcelona, and in Beijing, he was just a couple of weeks away from turning 53. In April 2011, I shot the Arizona Cup, and it was my first time shooting a senior competition in the US, meeting in person archers that I had only seen in videos or pictures on the internet. I had my fanboy moment, and I took pictures with famous people, and one of them, of course, was Butch Johnson. I'll post that picture on the show's Instagram and X. Sadly, this was my only interaction with him. Reacting to the news of Butch's passing, huge names in our sport spoke volumes about how more than an amazing archer, Butch was an amazing human being. A fierce competitor on the shooting line, a loving and kind character out of it. Our sport lost an icon, but we can look back and be grateful for his immeasurable contribution to archery, a sport he so dearly loved. His legacy will live on forever. Welcome to the Shoot-Off. I'm your host, Bernardo Oliveira, Olympic archer from Brazil, and here, every 2 weeks, we have one-on-one, in-depth conversations with some of the biggest names in our sport. Canada has a quite successful track record in archery. One might feel that Canadian achievements might have always been overshadowed by its neighbor, the US, but if you take into consideration that Canada has a bit more than 1/10 of the American population and harsher weather overall, their results then look quite impressive. Well, Dorothy Lindstone was a world champion in 1969. After that, Canadian compounders won several medals at the World Champs. But on the recurve men's side, Wayne Pullen got individual bronze in 1971, and that result was matched by Crispin Duenas only 42 years later. And then, at the 2023 World Archery Championships in Berlin, Eric Peters pushed Canadian recurve archery one step further by winning silver, narrowly missing on the world title by losing 6-4 against reigning Olympic champion Mete Gazos. And with Team Canada yet to win its first ever Olympic medal in archery, Eric Peters seems to be their best chance of stepping on the podium at the most important event we have. I caught up with Peters just a few days before he flew to Turkey for the last Olympic qualifier, and our talk was very insightful. So come with us as we share it with you. Eric Peters, welcome to the Shoot-Off Archery podcast. It's really nice to have you here. How have you been doing, man?
I've been good. Thanks for having me. I've been busy with, training the whole World Cup season and all that leading up and towards Paris.
Oh yeah, and the time is fast approaching. I really appreciate you having some time to talk to me and to the listeners ahead of the FQT. So you're traveling very soon, and of course, this is one of the most important moments of the season. How do you see yourself and Team Canada going into the FQT? Of course, the goal is to qualify the teams, right? So how are you guys feeling?
Yeah, it's been a kind of a crazy season for us, especially with qualifying. We were really close at Pan Am Championships and it didn't quite work out there. And then we were ready to go. We went into the season being really banking on Pan Am Champs as our major like team qualification event, as probably most of the teams in the Americas, right? That's always going to be your best shot. And then backup was always going to be FQT if we could do it. Now we've got to back up to that after the World Cup in Korea. We've had some pretty decent team results throughout the year, and then with Korea coming third there as a team, we're sort of shot up the rankings, and now using the ranking list is not out of the question at least. So we're feeling pretty good. We went from no one being pretty well counted out to at least a dark horse in this race as far as team round's concerned. So we're hopeful, but you're gonna have to see when we get there.
Yeah. Competition is so fierce, right? Like I think it's 40 plus teams on the recurve men's side.
Yeah,
It's like crazy, and yeah, of course, lots of those teams. It would be a huge surprise if they do get the quota place, but yeah, there are quite a lot of very good teams still outside, and but just to give context to people who don't know, like qualifying a team for the Olympics happens like the first opportunity is at the World Championships on the year before. Then we have the Continental Championships, and this is what you were talking about in Medellin earlier this year in Colombia. So like there was only one team quota, so like you had to be Pan American champion. And talking from our side in Brazil, it's like we saw, of course, we thought of ourselves as, one of the potential candidates. But of course, Mexico, USA, you guys, but no one really, expected Colombia. And
no, not at all.
yeah, so like when you guys first made it into the final, and then you knew you were going to be up against Colombia, like how did you take that? Because there was the home factor, like
For
there
sure.
would be crowd supporting, and also how did you guys feel going into the final? Because you with Team Canada, you got a gold at the Pan American Games in 2019.
Yeah.
So yeah, did you feel like you were the favorites, and it was yours to lose?
Uh, I mean, Colombia's a really good team, at least definitely between Santiago and Jorge. Like they're both really good archers. Hernandez was 16 years old, really young, kind of an upstart. So we felt good going into it. We thought we had thought at the time at least we'd overcome our biggest hurdle in Mexico in the semis. The teams from the Americas had all been really strong, and the other side of the bracket had worked out in sort of surprising ways, with, of course, Colombia coming into the final. So we thought we were in a good spot, but home field, they had been shooting really well all event, so we always knew it was going to be tough for sure. So, I mean, we weren't going to count them out and think this was going to be an easy match by any means, but we thought we had a good shot there. Like, it was totally reasonable for us to get the spot that way. And the match ended up going to a shoot off in the end, anyways. It was a bit of a collapse on our side, I'll be honest, unfortunately, but it felt fine. We went into it just ready to go and attack the shots and just go for it and see what happens. And it just didn't work out. That's the reality of the sport sometimes, right? You can do everything you want, and then sometimes it's just not enough. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's behind us at this point. I'm not bothered by it. It's frustrating for me, of course, but it's fine. Nothing in the world.
Yeah, of course, and yeah, and you guys bounced back like with that bronze in Korea at the World Cup stage. Like that was a huge result, and as you pointed out, like in the end, there are quotas awarded via the world ranking. So like even though you didn't win gold in Colombia, silver was a good result in terms of world ranking points, and then
For sure.
followed by bronze. So yeah, and if you guys manage to even if you don't qualify, and yeah, I'm sure you and everyone else is hoping that it's not the case, but then if you have a strong result in the World Cup in Turkey, then yeah, chances increase even more.
And then I was just very quickly gonna say, like, yeah, we were champions in at the Pan Am Games in 2019. But the team has seen a lot of changes in the last 5 years since then. The team that we had in Colombia was not the same team we took to Korea. I was on both teams, but we're trying to find the edge because got a lot of good guys on this team. So just figuring out what the best combination was for us. So we're figuring it out as we come into Turkey as well.
Yeah. Well pointed out, and that's got to be good. Like I've always believed that domestic competition tends to push everybody, to their best. But going back to that match, I was commentating that match, and it was crazy, absolutely crazy. Like you guys were leading 4-0, and I'm pretty sure that by the end of the first rotation in the third set, you were ahead. So it's like it really looked like it was done and dusted. But how was it? When Colombia managed to make a reaction, and to use your own words, like you guys kind of collapsed. Like how did you guys try and motivate each other, kind of like, yeah, we got this, and then how was it going into the shoot off?
Yeah, I mean, after that end, it was obviously really difficult. I think both Devon and I shot very well, and Crispin was doing what he could do. It was just the reality of the situation, and then after the third end, Colombia gets a bunch of momentum. They start to feel really good. They go and shoot a 58 in that fourth set to bring it to the shoot off. All the credit to them. They shot incredibly well. So going to the shoot off, it was just a matter of go in and just do the same thing we've been doing this entire time. It's not time to change anything in particular. Again, it's you go in there, you shoot the best you shoot, and you get what you deserve in the end. And then it just didn't work out. So again, reality of the sport. Unfortunately, sometimes you can do everything, and it's not going to be enough. And definitely, like, that was a particularly difficult one to lose, of course. But nines are not enough in a shoot off usually. So
yeah. That well. As much as it was, very exciting and everything for the Colombian side, like for you guys, that must have been hard to swallow. But
for sure.
Yeah. But then, like, let's move on to something way more cheerful and better memories. I believe, like, really wanted to hear from you about Berlin 23. Like your biggest result to date. So it's like you got silver medal individual in Berlin, losing 6-4 against Mete. Like the match was alive until the very end. Like, can you just tell us briefly, like, how do you see the week of the competition in Berlin? How did you feel, going in there throughout the week, and then you made it into the Elite Eight? Like, how was it all for you?
Yeah, my whole season up to that point had been very up and down. I finished 5th much earlier in the year in Turkey. I lost in the first round in Colombia. It wasn't super amazing. Then Berlin was, just go in and figure it out. Qualifying was fine. It was nothing particularly to write home about. I was not seeded particularly well. But as we all know, from just if you've shot a tournament before with matches, it doesn't matter where you qualify in the end, as long as you make the cut. As long as you win all your matches, you're going to be right there. And with how the weather was showing and everything like that, I kind of knew I was in a really good spot. I had been shooting really well. I know I could shoot really well. I was just as good as anyone else. It's simply a matter of I know I could deal with the conditions. On the matches day before the final 8, it was quite windy. It was quite significant weather, but not so much to make it make that whole field random. Like, I was talking to Crispin briefly about Bellic in 2013 and how incredibly windy it was there, and how that changed the dynamics of the field a lot. And that, well, not quite the case in Berlin. Was definitely, at least to my advantage. I can deal with that sort of condition a lot better. I'd say I'm fairly strong in wind, let alone I'm fairly physically strong as well. So I was feeling really good through all that. I was really excited to make that top 8 going into Sunday. And then Sunday was just a very wet, exciting day for sure. Yeah, that was just really cool. I won my first match against Steve Weiler from the Netherlands in some pretty torrential downpour. And that one was, you shoot as well as you can shoot, but, it's figuring it out as you go in the semi. And then at that point, you win that match, you have with the way everything had already broken down with team round 2 days before that, you know that if you win your semi, you're very likely to have won your Olympic spot for the country. So that was incredibly exciting. And then once and that quarterfinals match is mentally so much more difficult, I think, at least in my experience, than the semis match. Because win or lose in semis, you still have to shoot again, no matter what. We can talk about 2019, where we shot against each other again, we shot in that bronze medal match. That was both our second matches of the day. We both had to go and lose our semis against our own teammates, actually, in that case. And then, you're right into it again. Right? You go right into that bronze medal match. So, no matter what, you've got more to do. So winning that quarter feels a lot more important because you've guaranteed yourself at least 2 more matches. So you're in that mindset, I think, at that point. So the semi is a little bit more relaxed feeling almost than that quarter. That quarter feels a lot more high tension. And then, of course, the medal match is always very high tension as well. So that match against Mete, it's what it's going to be. Mete shot incredibly well. I was definitely a little more volatile. He was a lot more consistent than me in that match. But in the end, it comes down to a couple millimeters on the target to make the difference between it being 6-4 and bringing it to a shoot off instead. And that, it's the way it works out. I by no means was ever going to be upset. First or second, it was always going to be a great result, best result that Canadian man has seen individually. So I can't think back on Berlin and ever be disappointed. I will always think about, an arrow here or there, but I can always look at the medal and know that I, achieved something incredible for myself there.
Definitely. It was a mega result. Yeah. And I wonder if what you meant, like that the quarterfinals tends to be, maybe the toughest one because, if you win, as you said, you guarantee yourself some more matches and everything. Like, I don't know if this is what you mean, but I just hate the thought. And of course, when it happens that like you wake up, you get ready, you go to the field, you set up your equipment and you do the warm up and everything. And then you shoot 12 arrows and that's it. Like, I just hate this.
Oh, it feels horrible when that happens. But, you go into it fully ready to shoot 12 or 36 or 40 arrows or however many arrows there are available to shoot for score. You just go and try. But it is a lot better knowing that, no matter what happens, you're not done at that point. So winning that quarter always feels a lot better than losing the quarter, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And it was crazy because as you said, also to put some context here, like especially in the quarterfinals, it was pouring down. You and Steve, the first match, he took a bit long to find his way into the center of the target just to sight in, and you were like straight from the start. You were great, and I wonder as well, like how was it? For example, like you're at the practice field, getting ready for the match. It's raining, but then like you get called for the match like 10 minutes before, and during this time you're just sitting there cooling down, and conditions might be changing. How did you take this? Like, how did you try to prepare yourself to hit the arena and just be shooting in the center like you did, and have a strong start against Steve?
Yeah, well, in Berlin it was funny just because the weather, as we were warming up and getting practicing, it wasn't really raining at that point. The women shot that morning and it was dreary out for sure. It was cloudy and cool. There was maybe a little speckle of rain here and there, but there wasn't much rain, especially as we were practicing. And maybe you started to see the beginnings of a little bit of rain right as we were packing up, just ready to getting called. Saito, Fumiya, and Ara Pangetsu. I struggle. Anyway, the Indonesian, Indonesian gentleman. They shot the very first match of the quarters, and we're sitting there, called up, we're in the green room, just waiting, cooling down. And they weren't seeing nearly the same kind of rain as we were, but you could see it starting to pick up. So we were just, acknowledging that, hey, well, we're about to go walk out of here and start to get absolutely soaked. But in the green room, it's 15 minutes. Usually you're not cooling off too much. Over 15 minutes, you should be able to walk right up there, and in perfect conditions, you should be able to walk right out and shoot a 10. You should be at least in a fairly decent condition at that point to do that. So cooling down is never really a big concern. The bigger concern, I think, was just walking into the green room, and you and myself and anyone who does do this, you're sitting there with your opponent and their coach as well in the green room. And I had my mental performance coach Joe in there with me, so we thought to take advantage of the situation that we're in there. So let's control the atmosphere in there, right? So we were in there just talking, joking around, just having some fun, just to feel relaxed to go before we get up there and sort of feel in control of the situation, and fully just noting that it was going to rain and all that sort of stuff. So nothing special, just trying to stay relaxed because you're never really going to cool down too much. Getting onto the field, at least, you see it as downpour, and then I'm shooting second, just putting my first arrow down, and I do see, I see Steve shoot low, and that was honestly a big advantage just in those conditions to see how low he shoots, because I had figured I was going to have to aim quite a bit high just to accommodate for the rain. I was not expecting how high I was going to have to aim, and I would definitely have shot a much lower arrow had I shot first. So that was the one advantage of shooting second there. Usually I would prefer to shoot first, put the pressure on, but having the advantage of being able to see the weather without having to shoot it, it was huge, at least to get started off on the right foot, at least.
Yeah. So like you made a lot of clicks on your site already beforehand as you're walking into the venue, and then you aim higher as well?
No, I don't like moving my sight for the weather. I knew I was sighted in for good weather. Rain or like if there was rain, it wouldn't have mattered. I would just aim off. I'll pick a spot on the target and just keep shooting with what I would shoot with, and keep my sight where there would be if there was no rain, and then just pick a spot on the target and make the adjustment with my aiming point as compared to moving my sight. I find, and then especially because as the rain eased up towards the end of the match and into my next match, I wouldn't have to, keep moving my sight and fighting my aiming points. I could just pick spots on the target and make do as needed.
Cool. And then where were you aiming? Where did you start aiming?
I think I started aiming up in the 6 ring.
Well, okay.
As high as the 6 ring on my first arrows. The one disadvantage for sure doing that is, it's harder to be precisely in the middle, left and right when you're doing that. So I was seeing a little bit of drift left and right, consistently hitting left a lot more frequently than maybe I would otherwise. But some of that was just accommodating for aiming off and the lack of precision that comes from it. But you get what you get. But as far as throughout the match, I think I had ranged anywhere between a high 9.2 aiming point to as high as that 6 ring there, just to try and put them in the middle. And even then, sometimes that was just not enough, and they'd shoot out low at the bottom with the amount of rain that we were seeing.
Yeah. Oh no, it was yeah. Well, I remember watching that and I was like, whoa, that's a real challenge. Like maybe your match was the one with the heaviest rain. I think maybe Dalmeida and Kim Jadox as well.
I think those 2 quarters for sure were definitely the heaviest as far as rain was concerned.
Yeah. But then, but to be honest, I don't remember your semifinal that well. But anyway, I know everything happens very fast and you might not have time to think about all of that, but I don't know, but how did you think and feel going to the gold medal match? And when it was 4-4, only, 3 arrows between you and the world title, did you think about any of this? How was it for you?
At 4-4, my brain, once I step onto the shooting line, the brain turns off, the thinking about the story and what if I do win, what if I don't win. None of that's really in my head. As soon as I'm on the line, it's me and the target, and I'm there to shoot arrows. So there wasn't a lot of thought, I think, put into each of those arrows. It was just a matter of let's go, and I just shot a 30 the previous end, and I just wanted to go and shoot more 10s and really just attack it and with all the confidence in the world. Knowing that, I'd been in a match earlier that year with Mete, and I knew I had to shoot 30s. That was just the reality of it. So go in there and really attack it, put 10s down. I had my second arrow get away from me a little bit, just a little bit fast, a little bit tense. The pressure, I was starting to feel it a little bit and slipped just outside of the yellow into the 8. And that's a lot of room to put out there in a gold medal match, right? 2 points 28s aren't going to be enough at that point to really put it away. And, he goes and shoots 29. wins it before I put my last arrow down. So arrow 3 was a lot easier to shoot for sure. I knew, once he had shot that 29, that was it. So just, go pull it back, shoot it into the target, and go and congratulate him on the win from there. But I really wasn't thinking about, what if I'm world champion? What if that's going to happen? Because no guarantees until everything's out there. I don't want to think about what could happen and expectations like that. It's very much just try to be in that moment, enjoy it, and just go for it.
Yeah. Oh, but still, it was an amazing result nonetheless. And I'm wondering, like, following from a distance somehow, ever since the first time I've seen you and we shot together at the Pan American Games, we had a match against each other. But I've always known you, to be a good archer, but I just get a feeling that I guess last year, you just turned up a notch and, you got to another level, and going into this year, you maintain it, if I'm correct. But I don't know, what changed? Did you change something in your preparation, in your training, your routine? What, what made a difference to be achieving, different results?
Yeah. There's always, there's minor changes. Like number of years ago, almost 7 years ago now, I had a minor shoulder injury that, derailed some training and some of my progress at the time. But so, I've been more recovered slowly year over year, and I just was able to shoot more arrows, which is always going to be helpful to improve my progress. But I think the biggest difference between 2019, 2020, 2021, and all those years, and last year and this year, is very much just been everything outside of archery. I've had personally a lot of really difficult years with just family and my immediate family and their health, and loss of family members over those years that just made mentally training so much more difficult than they have been in the last couple of years. So I've been a lot more mentally free to just go out and do it and not feel so burdened with everything that's going on personally. And 2019 was my first year out on the international tournament scene, shooting World Cups and the likes. That was the first year where it really was I had some freedom to do it. I was kind of taking a bit of a break from university at the time. So I had the freedom to just go and shoot more arrows and attack it. And then COVID, of course, happened, and that, I didn't deal with COVID very well, and the restrictions that we had here in Canada made it a little bit more difficult to train. And it just, I was good, but I wasn't stable. And in that time, my dad had gotten quite ill, and then 2022, he had unfortunately passed away at the time. So at that point, 2022 kind of felt like a bit of a lost season. Just was really, really difficult emotionally to deal with the loss. The World Cup in Korea in 2022, we were away there, but on the way back home, he unfortunately passed away. So it was the rest of that season was just a real struggle, and I knew he wasn't super well at the time, but wasn't expecting to lose him while I was away at an event. So that made that really, really difficult. But I lost my dad that year, and that same year I graduated from university. So I've done school at that point. I have lots more time, and I've had some time to heal over the off season there and deal with that loss, and just, have the ability to just go all out and really commit the way I needed to commit to archery to be super successful in 2023. And this year is simply just a carryover from that, and kind of not having to deal with all the tragedy and all the extra pressures of, still being in university and moving into going in towards Paris. So it's been difficult. I've had a number of really difficult years personally between my education and my family, but now things are somewhat easier, at least. So it's made training and performing a lot better for sure. But that's the big difference, was everything going around outside of sport as compared to, the actual particulars of sport, because practicing and training and all that, nothing has really changed in the last couple of years as compared to previously. It was just a matter of everything else in my life going a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear about, your father's passing and your family situation.
Yeah, it's bit unfortunate, but things are moving along a lot better nowadays.
Yeah, I know that. Like what we do is very hard, even if everything else is going super well and smooth. And if we throw in any other kind of difficulties, especially family ones, personal matters, like can make it really, really challenging. But it's always great to see people bouncing back and coming back stronger after these situations. And since we are, talking a little bit more on the personal side, something I wonder, and I believe it can be useful to other people listening, especially in the US or Canada, who I believe might have a similar reality, is at each country, it's very different how, the kind of incentives that or the reality in general that athletes find, in order to be full-time or to be pros or to, I don't know, just make a kind of a living out of the sport. And I've always wanted to know how does it work in Canada? Like, are you full-time now? Or, is archery, do you make a living out of archery? How does it work?
Yeah. So no, I'm not. Well, I wouldn't classify myself completely as full time. Not recently, at least. Funding is available in Canada, of course. We have a carding system, is so to say that Sport Canada is the government body, and our Olympic Committee through our national sporting organization. So through Archery Canada, who's the national sport organization, pick a select group of athletes every year to receive carding, and that is simply just we get paid some amount depending on the level of athlete as a stipend to help afford living. For us, unfortunately, that amount of money is simply not enough to live on. It is below the poverty line in Canada. So, and then cost of living here at least is not that low, right? Rent is very expensive, food is very expensive. So that on its own is not enough to support any athlete as full time. And I'm very fortunate to have some sponsors in archery as far as helping me supply for equipment and some extra funding through that. And then I have some extra funding from the province, of course, in the country as well. So, but none of that is enough to live on. So I do work part-time as well. I'm very fortunate now that I'm done school that I can afford to do some more hours doing that, help pay the bills. My fiance, of course, works as well. So we live together, which helps afford the bills. But this is not something in Canada, at least, that you can really do, barring some compound archers shooting professionally in the 3D circuit in the US. They can make some full-time living, but in Olympic archery, it's just not a possibility in Canada. It's simply not. So you make do with what you get. I don't work a ton of hours, but it helps pay the bills enough to let me be as close to full-time as possible. I work in a pro shop, archery pro shop, so they're very understanding of the commitments that I've made, at least to traveling and all this sort of stuff. So very accommodating, at least. But this is not sustainable, unfortunately. So the reality is I will never be able to be full-time, barring some exceptional circumstances. So you do your best with the part-time that you get. That said, the part-time that we do get, you do the best that you can with that. And I know as compared to some other full-time athletes, I'm not training quite as much, but I'm a lot closer to a full-time athlete level of training than me saying that I'm part-time would imply, at least. So I'm up there with the aero volumes. I'm up there with the physical training and the sports psychology and all that sort of stuff. But again, it's just never going to be enough as compared to someone who can be in a country that is able to support their athletes as full-time athletes, or at least for individuals who are in situations in Canada that can afford to be full-time athletes. I know in Canada, in some other sports, you can be full-time, but that has little to do with government support and much more to do with private sponsorship and support like that. So I know in athletics and swimming and things like that, where there are a greater number of sponsors and a greater opportunities to be professional athletes, that it's a lot better, but for us, not so much. So it is certainly difficult.
We know Mete, he is like 100% full time, right? I've seen the part of the training plan that the Turkish do, and it's absolutely crazy. And man, really, like it makes your achievement to me stand out even more because, like, you got this the part-time job and everything, and you're doing the best you can, and still you were so super close to a guy who's like 100% dedicated to archery.
We always wonder, what it could be if you were full time, but again, with the way the sports system works in Canada, it's like even if I was full time, I still wouldn't have the resources that a lot of other countries might have. That's not the end of the world. In reality, you make do and you find out, because there is diminishing returns, I think, personally, as to how much you train, as to what value you're going to get out of it. So I think despite being part-time, I'm on that upper end of how much training is going to be useful, right? Like there will always be more gains from more training, but I'm not training so little that, any amount more training would be a significant jump.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to ask you this because this is, I believe, probably one of the most asked questions. And I believe there are people listening to the podcast who really want to know this from you and everyone else. But then on roughly speaking, how many arrows do you shoot per week and how many hours? What are the rough numbers of your training?
Yeah. So with work, I'm shooting somewhere in the range of 1,800 to 2,000 arrows a week. On a good week, I might shoot 2,100, 2,200 arrows. But then we're talking physical training. We're talking another 4 hours, 5 hours of physical training on top of all the mental performance. And that's kind of harder to quantify because that's an everyday, just small things here and there sort of thing. As far as like actively meeting with my sports site, Joe, we're talking just about an hour a week as far as like actively speaking to him. But as far as the actual work that happens that's on that side, we're talking maybe another couple hours a week. I wouldn't be able to tell you hours. I'd have to work it up. I think I'm closing in on 40 hours a week of training, probably. I could maybe squeeze out a few more here and there, but with also working and all that sort of stuff, it's a balance between, your own mental health and training more. I would say there's probably more value for me in keeping my mental health quality than there is in trying to squeeze out a couple more arrows per week.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, that's those are by far not bad numbers. Like you put in a lot of work. So yeah, really, really impressive. So I'd say to me, it looks more like you basically are a full-time archer and then you just manage to find some more time for the part-time job. And as you said, because it helps pay the bills and everything. But man, really,
sure.
It's really, really, really impressive. And the results are there to prove it's working. So yeah.
It is hard for sure, but we make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, after Paris, you plan to continue until LA?
That's a question that I need to ask myself after Paris. I know recently that Sport Canada has increased athlete funding, not by enough, I'll be honest, but it's gone up a little bit, so we're doing a little bit better in that regard. For post Paris, a little bit more support. That said, my fiance and I got engaged last year. We'd like to get married in 2025. I'm not old by any stretch. I'm 27, but we'd like to maybe have kids eventually. And with the way everything's going to cost in Canada, at least, that's not viable, at least as a full-time or at least a part-time athlete. So maybe we'll see. I might take a break. I might step back. I might not step back. That'll be a question for another day. For the time being, I try not to think about LA, at least not until after Paris is done. Would be great, but I know I have a lot more to give in me for sure as an archer. But you never know.
Yeah. Well, congrats on the engagement. That's great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And then just to wrap this first part of the show, Turkey, the World Cup, FQT and World Cup, like your guys as a team, but also individually, is that going to play a role into, deciding who goes to Paris or not? I guess maybe for the women's, it's a little bit more open.
For the women, it's a little bit more open. We'll only have 2 women there. And yeah, the Turkish World Cup is part of the selection process for the country. On the men's side, it's a little bit more, we have a better idea of what's going to happen. Like in just depending on results, but rough expectations, we kind of know where it's going. It will really, the big difference is what the team will look like if we have a full team, but technically undecided as of this moment.
All right. But, well, you said you've got 2 women. Aren't you taking a women's team to the FQT?
We will not be taking a women's team to FQT, unfortunately.
Okay.
We just the way that the selection process works with and how the document's written up, we don't have 3 women who meet the criteria for the team to send a full women's team, unfortunately. It's unfortunate, but we're sort of in a transition state with our women's team, and the depth is coming back, but it's just not there as of yet. We're much more optimistic for our women's team towards LA than we are for Paris.
I see.
It's just,
right.
Yeah, just in a transition phase right now with our women.
Yeah. Sounds good. But recent results are exciting, and
Absolutely.
LA 4 years from now. All right, then. Do you mind if we do an equipment rundown and just let us know everything you're shooting? So, riser and limbs.
So I'm shooting a Hoyt Formula XD and shooting axial limbs, the Hoyt axial limbs as well. Shooting the wood resin core limbs.
25-inch riser?
25-inch. Oh, they only come in 25-inch risers, so 25-inch riser for me. Yeah, and then long limbs.
Long limbs. And what poundage on the limbs?
So the limbs are 50-pound limbs. At my draw length on the fingers, we're looking right around 55 and a half, somewhere about there.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of poundage. I wasn't expecting that much. That's, wow, awesome.
Yeah.
And what about arrow and spine?
Arrows, I'm shooting, just like just about everybody else, we're shooting Easton X10s, shooting 325 spine arrows, kind of corresponding with the draw weight that I'm shooting there.
Yeah, and your draw length again?
I'm just shy of 30 inches in draw length. I'm not super tall, but I stretch out pretty well, apparently, for draw length. And then the 325s, according to charts and such, are, they run a little stiff, apparently, but I shoot them with 100 grain points in the back and pins without knocks. So I'm running them at very, very stiff, and that's just what tunes for me. I've always had to shoot a fairly stiff arrow to spine accordingly, just the way I come off the string.
Well, so 100 grains on the point.
100 grain points, yeah.
Wow, okay. And what veins and knock?
So this year I'm shooting Spider Veins, the ultra soft 1.8-inch medium veins. And then for knocks, I'm shooting Biter out knocks, the 451X. So the ones that will accept the pins on the back there.
Yeah, perfect. String material, serving, and twists.
Don't ask me about twists. I have no idea. String material, I'm shooting 8125 servings. End loops are 62XS. Sometimes I do it in halo, depending on how I feel. It's fairly minor differences I find on the end loops. I don't really notice a difference. On serving material, center serving is going to be 18th out Angel Majesty.
Button?
Biter.
Medium spring?
Medium spring, about, depending on how you want to count it, it's about an 8, depending if you're counting in or out. But yeah, 8, kind of on the weak side of the medium.
Oh, that's a bit surprising. Cool. Arrow rest?
Arrow rest, Shibuya, fairly standard.
Yeah. Sight and sight pin?
So as of today, it's an Excel Achieve XP. Before Paris, hopefully it's the XP Pro. Whenever those left-handed sights show up, that's the reality of left-handed sights.
Yeah.
And then shooting the Chef RXF pin 19,000 green.
Stabilizers?
Stabilizers are Ramrod Spectres, 27-inch long rod, 15-inch side rods, and then I'm going to assume you're asking about stabilizer weights. It's 20. These are the Steve Weiler editions as well, so they're going to have the 3 ounces of tungsten in the end caps on all 3 rods. Long rod, I have 24 ounces on the front rod, and then I've got 15 ounces of weights on each side rod.
And V-bar?
V-bar is the Ramrod's Edge V-bar, part of the whole kit, and then it's a 1-inch big stack extension at the front of the bow as well.
But does the edge come in like the fixed one, or the edge is the...
The edge is the adjustable.
Adjustable, yeah.
Yeah, the adjusted, yeah.
Dampers, which ones you use?
Those are the Kryptos arc dampers, the Excel ones, the Excel rubber ones.
Finger tab?
Finger tab is a Fairweather It's a large leathers. It's the pro plate and standard size 20 ring.
Clicker.
Clickers, biter. Again, nothing too crazy out there.
Yeah. Perfect. Now, then to finish off, there are two segments. One of them is build the perfect archer. So I'm gonna name aspects of the shot, and you tell me who you think the best person in the world is, and can be yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll think about it. Okay.
Yeah. This is fun. So to begin with, bow arm.
Oh, bow arm. Oh, I actually Liwasuk. It's just so stable.
Great. Release.
I know it's not my release. Oh, if it's current, I also really like Liwasuk's release. I'd say mine is fairly comparable. It just doesn't look nearly as pretty.
I see. Okay. Mental toughness.
Mental toughness. That one, I think that's so hard to quantify. I would give that a wash. I'd probably maybe Brady. He's been around doing this so long. He's been seen everything. Yeah, Brady Ellison maybe.
Good one. Body balance or stance.
I'd give that to Kim Woo-jin. Just so solid.
Mm-hmm. Follow through.
Follow through. No one will. I don't know if anyone will believe me, but I know he just retired. But I'll give it to Ozhiniak.
Yeah.
It looks so wild, but it's just something about it to me just seems so perfect. I don't know why.
I get a feeling it's like his shot is like the controlled chaos.
Yeah, it's the bow. He's so much stronger than his own bow. He just has full control over it, even if it does it just looks like such a mess sometimes, but it always works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And dealing with the wind.
I'm giving that to myself. I'll be honest. That's a me thing for sure.
And Berlin proves that. I've heard other people who were there tell me like, man, it was wild. It was, out of this world. And you're the first person who's telling me like, oh, you know what? Actually, it wasn't that bad. So I believe in you.
Yeah, you could read it. It was hard, but it was very understandable.
Yeah, and do you get a lot of windy conditions where you train?
Yeah, I grew up training for that, and like I lost. I did poorly once as a cadet when I was younger because of the wind, and refused to ever let that happen again.
Yeah, great. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, and the last segment is just some quick fire questions. The first one, of course, is after the name of the show. What is your most memorable shoot-off?
Memorable shoot-off? Oh, in 2019. So this is a shoot-off I lost, mind you. In 2019, so this was still when we had the reshoot if both arrows are 10 rule.
Ah, yeah.
I had a match against Galeazzo in the round of 16.
And where was that?
In Turkey. World Cup in Turkey in 2019. We went XX followed by XX. Something like that. Both of us. And I shot the better X the first time, and then he shot the better X the second time.
No way.
Probably the best shoot off I've ever shot. And he still lost it on that rule. That was incredible. That was probably my favorite.
Wow. Well, I don't know how you felt, but of course losing always sucks. But when you lose shooting good, it doesn't feel that bad. Because it's kind of like, yeah, the other guy, he was awesome, and yeah, hats off.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely my favorite.
Great one. What's your favorite archery event in the world, current or past?
I would honestly like the Lancaster Classic is probably some of the most fun I've had shooting archery events. I love the format and I love the shoot up. It's just so demanding on you. I love indoors. I'm pretty good outside. I'd argue I'm better indoors. So the Lancaster Classic is probably my favorite. It's not a World Archery event, but it's a really great event that if anyone listening, if they've never been and it's something that's fairly reasonable for them to go to, I'd absolutely recommend you go.
Yeah, I guess most of the times when I asked people this question, Like most of the answers are Vegas, and I understand, but I've never been there. And now at last you said Lancaster Archery Classic, and that's one I've been to, and I absolutely loved it. Like it was amazing, like everything about it, and yeah.
Vegas is great, but it is it's a mental toughness battle. Lancaster is much more of a sprint. Vegas is all about being consistent day in and day out, and Lancaster rather is just you can attack everything so much more, and it's just so much more alive. And then for me, I can drive there, which is an incredible convenience. It's not that hard to get to.
But it must be a somewhat long drive. How long does it take?
About 7 hours, 7.5 hours. It's really not terrible. For North America, it's really not terrible.
Yeah, but for Brazilian standards as well, 7 is not too bad.
No, for European standards, I can absolutely I understand it's quite a bit longer, but
yeah,
for the Americas, it's really not terrible.
Yeah, great. And last archery related one, just an overall, in your opinion, who's the best archer with the best technique you've ever seen?
Oh, best. So the best I have answers for best archer and best technique. I'll be on because best archer I think is Kim Woo-jin.
Okay.
I have just always incredibly impressed. Best technique goes to his younger teammate, same age as me, is Lee Woo-suk. Just an absolute machine. We both shot Youth Olympics in 2014 in Nanjing, and just it looks the same now as it did then. And just I think it's just such a clean, beautiful looking shot.
Cool. Now the not related archery ones. What's your dream vacation destination?
I'll be honest. I haven't taken a vacation in a lot of years. I think right now my first vacation planned for at the end of the season is probably Mexico. Just relax by a beach for a week and take some time off and unwind. I think that would be spectacular. I've had the opportunity to travel a lot and see a lot of things, but right now a beach sounds really good.
All right. Any specific beach in Mexico?
No, nowhere in particular. I think my fiance is gonna make that pick, and I'm just along for the ride. Wherever she goes, I think I'll be more than happy to be.
Yeah, I'm sure. That sounds good. And do you have any hobbies and pets?
Yeah. So I have 2 cats who I think are sleeping right now. So we have 2 fairly young cats, and then hobbies. I've kind of over the last few months actually, running has been part of my just physical training, keeping up with the cardio, but I've really come to really start to enjoy that. So that's increasingly, I'd call that my hobby. If it's not archery, I guess it would be running at this point.
And it's great to unwind, right?
For sure. I would still say though, honestly, archery of all sorts, if I'm not shooting Olympic, maybe I'm shooting something else, but archery is still, as much as it is my job, it's also still my hobby.
That's great. The enjoyment side of it, right? Now, a book and/or movie recommendation can be archery related or not.
A book? I know. Well, it's twofold. If anyone's already seen the movies, Dune is that good, I will admit. But please read the books. It does get a little crazy if you start reading enough. But I promise it's worthwhile if you can at least dig through all the details.
Have you? How many books is it?
Oh goodness, I would have to look it up. It's a lot of books. It's more books than you think. It's more than just the one book.
Okay, but have you read them all?
I've not read them all yet. But if you're going to read at least one book, I'd at least read the first Dune book.
Yeah, but it's nice you said this, because last time I traveled to Brazil on the plane, I watched the first movie, and man, I loved it. It's really cool. I feel like watching the second one. But I'm a big fan of books, and I was told by a couple of people that the books are amazing.
Absolutely, they're great. My fiance is a much bigger reader than I am. I don't read probably as much as I would like to. Otherwise, if you're not reading Dune, I'd recommend The Way of Kings, which is the first book in the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. Anything Brandon Sanderson is really, really good if you're into fantasy and the likes. if you're not into that, I don't really have a lot of recommendations. That's a lot of what I read. But I'd recommend The Way of Kings is a great book as well.
I never heard of this author, so I'll look that up.
I don't know if he's published in Portuguese, but I do know he's definitely published in English.
Yeah, but I'll look that up. Always looking for new recommendations. There's still a lot of sci-fi stuff I want to read, and Dune is one of them. But I also love some more historical stuff or just fiction in general.
Yeah, no, but Dune is a good one. I would get into that.
Yeah, cool. Last one, a song and why.
Oh no, I'm blanking on the name. It's Not All About You by Lawrence. Lawrence is a band. It's sort of soul, jazz, pop sort of thing. They're an American band. It's very, very good. I just think it's just super catchy and maybe a little bit of a good reminder to get out of your own head, maybe tone down that ego a little bit because, life really isn't all about you and you will frustrate some people sometimes if you make it that way.
Mm-hmm. Great one. Yeah, I believe it's always a welcome reminder and linking to books. There's a great one I read, Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Maybe it touches on what the song is about, but I'll look that one up and give it a listen.
Yeah, I would. That band is great. I love them.
Yeah, so you listen to more of their songs. It's not just this one.
No, I listened to the whole discography is great, but that one's really good.
Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So we've come to the end. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it, man. Like you just like so many people. You're someone I've met several times in many competitions, but never we got to any close to having a conversation like this, and I really enjoyed it. It was a pleasure to get to know you better. It's always cool to get to know the person behind the athlete. Everyone has great stories and a lot of depth, and so yeah, it was a real pleasure, and I really appreciate once again your time. You're about to fly to Turkey, and wish you and Team Canada all the best. I'll be following, and wishing all the best. Thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. I gotta say, before interviewing Eric, I didn't really know what to expect. He always seemed to me to be quite reserved, and even though we've had some nice conversations before, nothing came close to this talk. But recording this was so nice. To me, it's always fascinating to get to know the person behind the archer, and I shared with him one of the biggest moments of my career. We both shot for individual bronze at the 2019 Pan American Games. He beat me 7-1, finishing with a 30. And we should also mention that this was the competition where Brady Ellison set the world record with 702 points. And Eric eliminated Brady 6-0 in the quarterfinals. Even though I was set to miss on the podium, of course, it was still a great result for me. I'm wishing him and Team Canada all the best at the final qualification tournament and World Cup stage coming up in Antalya, Turkey. Feel free to reach out to me with suggestions, feedback, or questions you'd like to have answered here on the show, or to simply share cool stories. For this episode I couldn't, but next one I'll share some messages I've received from you. You can find the show's Instagram, X, YouTube, and email in the description. If you like the show, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. And if you're a compound archer, get ready for the next episode. It'll be with a true compound legend. And a little hint, this archer is not from the US. So from me, it's goodbye for now. I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks, and until then, keep on shooting strong. This is the Shoot Off Archery Podcast. I'm Bernardo Oliveira. Thank you for listening.